Most romance anime visual novels depict love as this rose-colored, wholesome, passionate tale. However, love also has a much darker side to it. It can be messy, complicated, and even hurtful, but it's through showing those raw, negative emotions too that we see love and romance in its entirety unfiltered. White Album 2 is one story that demonstrates this to such a high level, to the point where it stands as one of the highest rated visual novels of all time. Hi, my name is August, and I'm going to dive into this beloved and well-regarded story, for what appears as a simple love triangle at first glance reveals itself as a romance drama masterpiece that shows the full extent of the emotion called love. It's a premise that starts out extremely simple, but seeing how it changes, grows, adapts, explodes, and then resolves is worthwhile. White Album 2 follows the story of Haruki Kitahara, a third-year high school member of the Light Music Club who dreams of performing an original song on concert stage. With only 30 days left until the culture festival, he recruits two female members, Setsuna Ogino, the school's renowned idol, and Kazusa Toma, the standoffish piano prodigy. As the three work together to make the festival a success, their lives become more intertwined with one another, resulting in a vicious love triangle that will haunt them beyond their high school years. Note, White Album 2 does not require reading White Album 1. There are some small references to White Album 1, but they are very few and doesn't affect the main story. White Album 2 is a story that takes place throughout high school and college, separated via parts, the introductory chapter and the closing chapter. The introductory chapter is dedicated to showing how these three individuals met, fell in love, and the ongoing love triangle that results from it. Closing chapter is then the fallout from those events. Because let me tell you, mistakes were made and it only followed them like a horrible nightmare. Closing chapter is the story of how these characters explore different ways to recover from their relationship problems, either by getting back together, running away, or putting an end to it all, scorched earth style. White Album 2 is exceptional because it is a full breakdown of that entire process, showing each character's inner beliefs, feelings, and motivations, and then the actions they choose to take, or even not take. These characters make some utterly disastrous decisions, and I argue that's good writing. Sure, you can try to defend their actions, but you can't claim they're doing the right thing all the time. On the opposite side, you can harshly criticize them for the acts they do, but you can also understand why they did it. All of that is thanks to White Album 2 creating such a strong foundation for its characters, to where you can really see the logical progression and motivations behind their decisions. The inner core of these characters is developed all throughout the events that take place in the story, but we have to address what is probably the most understated factor of them all: their parents. As it turns out, bonding over broken family affairs is a fast track towards romantic relationships, arguably both healthy and unhealthy. Haruki and Kazusa have very similar family situations. They just turned out slightly different from one another. Haruki became super reliable to everyone, meanwhile Kazusa became highly distant from everyone. And while Setsuna doesn't have a bad family situation, you could say being spoiled by her family made her into a rather different kind of problematic girl. Although there are more drastic factors in play. Setsuna's quite the interesting woman. Their parental figures ended up creating emotional insecurities in them, which led to these characters feeling repressed, subconsciously bonding them with each other. The best possible thing to happen to them, and the absolute worst thing to happen to them. White Album 2 creates this nasty predicament. Their personalities and insecurities ultimately led these three to each other. However, attempting to prioritize their emotional needs means that someone has to lose in this love triangle. Combine that with these characters being young adolescents not fully understanding the gravity of their actions, and it makes the brutal nature of this love triangle even more fatally devastating. A recipe for disaster. How White Album 2 sets up this scenario and establishes characters is exceptional, matching premise to personalities and even scene-to-scene direction. I say that because this story delivers it in the most emotionally ruthless way possible. In fact, despite how realistic these characters feel, White Album 2 is probably the most elaborately constructed theatrical drama out there, exaggerated and excessively dramatic just to hit you like a truck. In a very crude way, you could say it's outright funny how horribly perfect the timing is in here. Conversations being cut off at the right moments, talking about certain individuals behind their backs, only for them to show up, and my personal favorite, phone calls interrupting very important moments. Take Murphy's Law, distill it into romance anime, and you have White Album. both of them. Realistically, none of this would happen, but in fiction, holy hell does it make for some incredibly good entertainment. White Album 2 is peak anime soap opera, and it sure doesn't hold back. What's also noteworthy is that these events are also not bluntly delivered in a melodramatic way. Again, this is a case where White Album 2's solidly defined characters act in natural ways according to their personalities, including ways that are self-destructive, manipulative, or just straight up malicious. Actions that may look terrible when viewed by readers. However, you can't say that's not consistent. I get a personal kick out of seeing these heroines act in accordance to their feelings, but it's equally dreadful seeing it all play about. I'm just not invested into all of them. Compared to another similar yet very different romance drama visual novel, I am both rooting and distressing for these characters. For every event that favors one heroine, it also means deeply damaging the other one. It's outright torture, especially as you're watching their conversation and thoughts line by line, calling out their lying ass when you know full well they ain't believing the words coming out of their mouth. White Album 2 is actually a test of your reading comprehension to see if you can read between the lines. The script and dialogue in here is layered. The writing conveys direct spoken thoughts and mannerisms, yes, but there's also the unspoken true thoughts shrouded behind each thought and line. In scenes, you'll have the initial surface level conversation playing out. Then there's Haruki's internal thoughts narrating his intent. And then you have Haruki's subconscious true feelings, aka the feelings the reader is meant to interpret, leaking out from the former. It's so dysfunctional that you could call Haruki the POV main character, an unreliable narrator, because the dude is such a natural liar no matter how much he denies it. It's not just Haruki too. Other characters' expressions and voice line will give off subtle tells to how they are truly feeling. Not to mention how some people will just straight up lie to you and Haruki. It's actually a special treat that we got to see White Album 2 as an anime, because you can see the directorial vision behind showing and obscuring certain facial expressions. Shame though that only the first half was adapted. Might be obvious, but the introductory chapter is the core driving force behind all of the characters in closing chapter. The reason why introductory chapter is so important and significant is because it shows you that rose-colored glimpse of youth that these three experienced. Yes, even despite the love-romance troubles, this was their happiest, highest point, where everything was alright in the universe. And yet, for as much as those moments are beloved memories, they can also be scarring marks of regret too. Where did it all go wrong? Closing chapter is about acknowledging those past feelings of nostalgia while confronting those past moments of regret and moving forward past that history, lest they cling on and let it destroy them. But in order to address that, we need to talk about White Album 2's most impactful pillar, Kazusa Toma, the distant Ice Queen musical prodigy, as well as the delinquent problem child. Kazusa is not a very happy person. With a celebrity mother who was rarely present and inherited musical talent so exceptional that it isolated her from everyone around her, it's very easy to see how she ended up this way. Right from the start, she is shown as Haruki's cold next-door neighbor, a young girl who couldn't care less about the people around her. That is, until our insistent prodding Haruki breaks her out of her shell. We see Kazusa constantly rejecting him on every notion until she begrudgingly accepts him. Over time, through all of their jabs, jokes, insults, and criticisms, you can slowly feel that natural chemistry forming between them. Really, it's that stubbornness backed by genuine consideration and admiration hiding behind their banter that really seals the deal. There's even those master-apprentice roles that they share, which is just a nice cherry on top. You could say there's some intimate roleplay seeped into their banter. I have joke about that pairing, but I simply like how the both of them just outright respects and appreciates the other. Now, with all that formal analysis of her character and relationship aside, Kazusa's contrast is so good. Her Ice Queen personality slowly fading to reveal more of her subtle affectionate side is such a charming sight to see, and with that soothing deep voice of hers, my God, I understand why so many people are Team Kazusa. By the end, Kazusa's character transformation was a wonderful sight to see, having endured through plenty of road bumps, painful ordeals, and grave sins committed on the road to get there. It's no wonder why Setsuna is so afraid. Girl's got some strong competition. Setsuna is the school's prized idol, beautiful among her peers, cheerful among her friends, and overall a kind, loving person. The homely girl next door that's just way too nice. She's also the most significant driver of the trio's intimate friendship. She is the reason why Haruki can fulfill his dreams and Kazusa can slowly be more comfortable around others again. An act of very benevolence, but one pursued very aggressively. Like Kazusa, she too suffers from insecurities caused at a young age. Those reasons is why she moves the way she does, despite how controversial and yet beneficial it is on paper. You could say that Setsuna is the biggest wing woman to have as a friend, while also being the greatest enemy for those opposing her. And the reason for this lies in her emotional intelligence. Girl's got her women intuition stat maxed out, dare I say omniscient-like levels of insight. Among the three, she's the most conscious and aware of her feelings and her friends. Very easy work for her to read the room and influence the other two. Yes, Kazusa might disengage from the idea of working together, and Haruki struggles in his attempts to invite Kazusa over to his band, but Setsuna can soul read them both to bait them into doing what she wants. Do I think this is a bit cunning, manipulative, and selfish? Yeah, I believe so. But I can't outright hate the girl due to her well-intentions, understanding her personality, and the pain she's gone through. I also just have a soft spot for the girl whenever she looks sad on screen, but that's just personal bias. I've never seen anyone with relationship PTSD this bad before. I think it's perfectly understandable to keep your beloved friends all together, but when the emotion called love starts seeping in, affecting everyone, there's only so much you can do, and someone will ultimately suffer more than the other. You can really sense the subtle envy, jealousy, and even loathing that these characters hold inside of them. White Album 2 constantly builds up these emotions, the characters bottling them up inside, until that explosive release, making the most sane person commit irrational, unforgivable actions. It really is a sight to see, although I see some people feeling frustrated seeing them like this. Again, like I said, these characters make wrong decisions. It's easy to blame one over the other to justify who's the most at fault. But me personally, I never felt angry at any character in particular. I just felt sad all around. That said, I do think most people would have a clear target. Mr. Guitarist, Mr. Executive Committee, Mr. Widely inconsistent, easily toyed around by women, Haruki Kitahara. You know, I actually kinda understand why so many of the girls gravitate towards this man. A smart, capable guy with a strong sense of responsibility, a hard-working model student where his eager, caring personality ends up coming across as nosy and meddlesome. And most of all, he's very good house husband material. The #1 attractive quality for 3 out of the 5 heroines in here, given how much of a disaster they are in their personal life. Haruki's got some great qualities all around, but they can also worsen his flaws too. Sure, his open generosity is a good thing, but when it comes to dedicating himself to one person or even his own feelings, in the face of that poor girl with puppy dog eyes, he is going to 100% waver. He's more than willing to prop up the other girls he sees with admiration, but he sure doesn't see himself the same way, always having this lack of self-confidence in himself. And worst of all, his deep in thought considerations ultimately ends up paralyzing him when it truly matters. All of this together results in this passive go-with-the-flow attitude when it comes to his romantic affairs, where he just ends up getting swept up by whatever female angel decides to adopt them on the spot. The moment Haruki looks just a tiny bit vulnerable, the girls see him as ripe for the picking. The dude's indecisive about his own feelings, he never makes a choice for himself, and he's always blind to the way others feel about him romantically. Frustrating, yes, but I completely understand it. Haruki's behaviors in White Album 2 have consequences, and when combined with his ultra-serious nature and low self-esteem, results in a downward spiral of guilt and self-loathing. And you can see this from his inner thoughts. But for as much as he's aggravating, it's also equally compelling when he does finally decide to pick himself back up and make a clear decision on what he wants to do. Simply because he is that same guy I talked about at the beginning. A hardworking, capable guy who could do anything if he puts his mind to it. We just have to get through like 80% of each of the routes in the closing chapter first. After the disastrous conclusion in the introductory chapter. Note, I mean that for the characters. The actual story was super good. We skip forward a couple of years to our cast in college. Interesting to see how things ended up, and equally puzzling. Like, who are you people? Koharu is one bold underclassman, someone dutiful and responsible, deeply considerate to the point of outright nosiness, and to those she approaches can be seen as a stubborn nuisance. Translation? She is basically Mini Haruki. The Kohais even nicknamed that too. So what happens when Mini female Haruki meets the real OG? The dude's gonna get a taste of his own medicine. Every single time she pulls out this expression makes me think of how much of a brat she is. And yet, despite that, she gets very charming as time goes on. This girl encapsulates everything attractive about a female underclassman love interest. Very cute in her vocal inflections, adorably charming in her reactions in love, and invoking that natural urge to protect and care for her. This girl is just that irresistible, even more so when combined with her insistence, rather consideration admiration and dependence for her senpai. So when she sees Haruki in dire straits, she can't help but step in. Actions very similar to what Haruki did for Kazusa, to which it becomes very haunting to see her possibly heading down the same pathway as him. I like how Koharu's route is this look into the interpersonal crossover between high school and college. Using the experience our college cast has gained, they are able to give advice and inspiration to their high school underclassmen. There's also this heavy emphasis on how the relationships formed during those years should be cherished. Believe me, considering what tragic stuff happens in the introductory chapter, I'm surprised both Io and Takia are still pals with Haruki and Setsuna. Really, the truest besties always ambush their friends with whatever surprise scheme they have cooking up, even many years later. There's something really special in how White Album 2 shows these characters going at lengths for the special people in their lives, because they mean so much to them. I can feel that heartwarming comfort and intense jealousy, because damn, I wish I had someone like that. Someone who's willing to take care of my dysfunctional self too. Which brings me to Chiaki Izumi. This girl is the definition of a freeloader. Irresponsible, carefree, and lazy. The very first scene you see her in is her waking up in a sleeping bag in a college clubroom floor, only to then bug Haruki for food favors, to which she succeeds multiple times. Really, it's that tomboyish attitude and general unfemininity that disarms and distracts Haruki. For quite a while, I actually disliked Chiaki. Her banter with Haruki is amusing, but it never progressed anywhere. That is, until her moments of sharp insight and signal of emotional availability reveals itself to Haruki at his time of need. I see Chiaki's route as a case of exploring selfish ulterior motivations in the pursuit of love. I imagine that people will see Chiaki as a utterly hateable person, but man, I gotta respect the hustle. Chiaki is just a natural at wooing Haruki. Her route is super complicated all throughout, but super interesting to read, especially after seeing the plot twist in Chiaki's true ending. White Album 2 is a story that requires multiple read-throughs. After finishing your first playthrough, you will unlock certain scenes previously unavailable, scenes from a different character perspective. The reason why I'm saying this now is because after finishing Chiaki's normal ending, you unlock new scenes in the introductory chapter that help add and provide new context to later events in closing chapter and Chiaki's route specifically. It's also important because you cannot unlock Setsuna's route in closing chapter until Chiaki's is done. Which is why I followed this recommended reading guide for White Album 2, and I recommend you do too. I was perfectly fine with it myself, however, that meant delaying the heroine who I wanted to chase after first. The career-focused workaholic, but arguably the most maidenly girl of them all, Mari Kitaoka. I was crying in this route. I love everyone equally, but damn, Mari has me sweating for how much she went after my heart personally. Being an older woman is one thing, but she's also my type. Mari is Haruki's direct boss at his part-time job. Cool, stern, strong-willed, and ambitious. A woman dedicated to the grind, and who also sees Haruki as a dependable employee with great potential. Mari and Haruki's relationship gave very classic workplace romance vibes. That ease of familiarity in their partnership, the admiration and aspirations that come with their field of work, and a spiciness that comes from having a boss and intern in a relationship together. In fact, it's because of that last point that really drives the nature of events in her route. Obviously, an older woman's superior having affections for her young coworker is one thing, but the girl really fell hard, where underneath her strict, work-oriented attitude commanding in front of others is a woman very much adorable and cute in private. A maiden that gets easily flustered when caught off guard about romance and slightly awkward in more intimate settings. Traits very similar to another stern yet secretly affectionate female character. Yeah, things are clearly gonna end well. I like Mari's route because it treats romantic encounters as passionate, but it also deals with that ambiguous nature of how serious is this? After all, when past flames are still present, who knows how the other party will react? Time may heal past wounds, but decisions have to be made in a timely manner. Hesitation is fatal. Delaying the inevitable only harms everyone involved, and if not now, then when? Which is why I think it's apt that Setsuna's route in closing chapter deals with moving forward most of all. It's the one that felt the most right as a conclusion. After watching Haruki struggle to move forward in all the other routes, seeing Setsuna's own journey to overcome her own problems was satisfying. Can't ask for a better closing, especially after taking so many L's in the other routes. But just when I thought everything was over, it was very much not. It was a notable feat that they were able to resolve Setsuna's character arc without the presence of Kazusa. So imagine my surprise when Coda exists. Yep, didn't know there was an Act 3. I do think that it's a regrettable downside that despite his dedication in Setsuna's closing chapter, Haruki ended up wavering again. I fully understand the necessity though. His feelings on Kazasa was never resolved, and neither was hers either. Kazasa, in her own way, was running away from her problems. And what's worse is that this girl did not stagnate, she regressed. Kazasa is just way too cute here. I can understand why Haruki wavered, but he can't do that anymore. Koda finally forces Haruki, Setsuna, and Kazasa to confront each other about their true feelings in a very raw, explosive way. I could just not look away. Koda is their final test. It's not a question of who do I love, but who do I love more, and the story shows their answer and acceptance. All of this is messy and complicated. White Album 2 is the greatest anime soap opera I've ever seen, and yet, for as much as White Album 2 shows these characters at their worst, it's their journey to happiness and love that feels so emotionally satisfying. Seeing them through the years spanning high school to university to adult life as they overcome those hurdles is just so cathartic. A top tier visual novel, the best and my favorite romance title by far. If you enjoyed this video and want something similar to check out, I highly recommend checking out this video over here or this one for a list of general recommendations. I would also like to thank everyone on Patreon for supporting me in covering visual novels. You guys are fantastic, and if you'd like to be a part of that effort, please consider subscribing. And finally, Setsuna over Kazasa.